What was the saddest sentence you have seen a judge give someone? I was sitting in the gallery during my cousin Carol's sentencing hearing. She had been married to Daniel for 26 years, and for the last 8 of those years, he had been completely bedridden with late-stage ALS. This wasn't just being sick in bed. Daniel couldn't move anything except his eyes. He couldn't speak, couldn't swallow, couldn't even breathe without machines helping him every single breath. Carol took care of him around the clock. Every morning at 6, she would wake up and start his feeding routine through the tube in his stomach. She would clean him, turn him to prevent sores, suction his throat when mucus built up. She did this every single day for 8 years without a break. The only way Daniel could communicate was by blinking his eyes. 2 blinks meant yes, 1 blink meant no. That was it. That was all he had left of himself, and for years, he had been using those blinks to beg Carol to end his life. She would ask him if he wanted water, and he would blink once for no. She would ask if he was comfortable, and he would blink once for no. Then he would look at her with those desperate eyes and blink twice when she asked if he wanted it all to stop. Carol refused every single time. She couldn't do it. She loved him too much to let him go, even when letting him go was exactly what love looked like. Everything changed on a Tuesday night in March. Daniel had a massive seizure that lasted almost 4 minutes. Carol called the paramedics, but by the time they got there, he had stopped responding completely. They managed to bring him back, but the doctor pulled Carol aside afterward and told her the seizures would only get worse and more frequent from here on out. That night, Carol sat next to Daniel's bed and asked him one more time if he wanted her to help him die. He blinked twice, then kept blinking twice over and over again until tears rolled down his cheeks. She gave him a high dose of morphine from his pain medication supply and sat beside him, holding his hand and telling him stories about their honeymoon in Colorado until he stopped breathing. She didn't panic. She didn't try to hide what she had done. She called the hospital and told them exactly what had happened. Carol left a 3-page letter explaining everything. How much she loved Daniel, how he had begged her for years, how she couldn't watch him suffer anymore, knowing it would only get worse. She wrote about how this wasn't murder, this was mercy. She was arrested the next morning for second-degree murder. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The prosecutor argued that Carol had no right to decide when someone else should die, regardless of their condition. Carol's lawyer argued that this was a compassionate act by a devoted wife who was following her husband's clearly expressed wishes. During the sentencing hearing, Judge Williams read Carol's letter out loud to the entire courtroom. His voice started steady, but by the second page, he was crying. Everyone in the gallery was crying. Even the bailiff was wiping his eyes. But when he finished reading, Judge Williams looked at Carol and said the law was absolutely clear. Their state had no legal protections for euthanasia or assisted dying. Intent didn't matter. Compassion didn't matter. Carol had deliberately ended another person's life, and that was second-degree murder. He sentenced her to 9 years in state prison. The courtroom went completely silent. Carol stood up slowly and turned to face her 3 kids sitting in the front row. Her voice was steady when she said, "I would do it again in a heartbeat. Your father was suffering, and now he's finally at peace." Her oldest son stood up first, then her daughter, then her youngest boy. They started clapping. Then Daniel's brother stood up and clapped. Then his sister. Then everyone in the gallery was on their feet applauding this woman who was about to spend nearly a decade in prison for loving her husband enough to set him free. Judge Williams quietly told everyone to sit down, but his own hands were shaking. The bailiff had to help Carol walk to the transport area because her legs gave out. She served 4 years before being released on parole for good behavior. Daniel had been dead for over 4 years by then, but Carol said she still talked to him every night and told him about her day.